Ever wondered what it feels like to have a dungeon rearrange itself under the player's feet? This is a DM's guide to level 5 of the final tomb in Tomb of Annihilation. The floor is called Gears of Hate. Its backdrop is an active, ever-shifting puzzle that keeps players guessing and hopefully a little bit on edge. An Aboleth lives in the surrounding waters, and some of its grey slime ends up in parts of the dungeon. This grey slime does 1d10 psychic damage. There's also the ever-present rumbling in the backdrop. This room is the engine room to something deeper. Area 58. This rotatable room has metal-clad walls and has a garden of sickly plants almost filling it. When the room turns, sprinklers pull water from outside. Lining up this room with Area 63 causes gas to billow in, which is poisonous, creating 3 shambling mounds. The metal walls here are very difficult to climb. Area 59 is a very similar room, but has dragon heads made of, I think, metal, that pour in acid. There's a faint acidy smell to the room. But the acid delivering compartments are all but empty. You can have a few drips perhaps. The octagonal shaped skeleton key is here, if we want it to be here. Area 60. The metal room has 5 wardrobes with pictures on each of them that summon monsters to fight. All 5 wardrobes have to be completed before a portcullis will open up north. Only one wardrobe summons its contents at a time. Once defeated, the second one can be opened and summoned. These wardrobes can be tackled in any order. And 5 useful red droplet looking crystals light up so you know how many you've done. But since the wardrobes disappear when you've completed them, there's really no need for the crystals. The wardrobes themselves have an AC of 11 and only 30 hit points, which kind of threatens the fun here. Do you make a couple of them indestructible, or do you allow them to smash up half, or just some, in order to yes and your players? Let's go through them. The Acheron door, if that's how you pronounce it, has orcs fighting goblins on it. An orc war chief and 7 orcs get summoned. An orc is AC 13, 15 average health. Can use a bonus action to move towards a hostile creature. Great axe, 9 average slashing. Javelin, about 6 piercing. The orc war chief then, AC 16, 93 average health. This is the big bad boy. Makes 2 attacks with its great axe or spear. The great axe, another 15 damage. The spear, another 12 on average. Battle cry once a day. Its allies get advantage on attacks. And then the war chief can make an attack as a bonus action as well. They don't seem to be in the 2025 rules. The Gehenna door shows a hag cradling a baby. So you might be expecting a hag to come out of it. It doesn't. It's 2 Mezzoloths instead. Mezzoloth AC 8, 75 average health, resistant to cold, fire and lightning. Has blind sight, remember that. Advantage against magic. 2 claw attacks, plus 7. Can grapple them with 2 of its 4 claws, and they are restrained. Does about 9 slashing. Then it's Mercurial Trident, 8 piercing, 10 damage. Then that weapon magically reappears back in their hand. Cloud Kill, Darkness, Dispel Magic as a spell casting. And it teleports as a bonus action and takes the grappled creature with it. The Mechanist door has a clock on it. A monodrone pops out, which only fights in self-defence and just wants nothing more than to go back to Mechanist, but can't go. Maybe they befriend it and have it as a little bit of an ally? Do they pop it through the portcullis gaps? The Nine Hells door has a lot of screaming faces on. That's a Bone Devil fight. Bone Devil AC 16, 161 health, flies 40 feet. Immune to fire, poison, poisoned. Advantage on saves against magic. 2 claw attacks for 13 slashing and an infernal sting. 15 piercing plus 18 poison. And they are poisoned and can't regain hit points. Finally, a Shadowfell door. Shows ghouls biting meat from bones. No ghouls are summoned. It's 4 will-o-wisps, who are invisible at first, that's worth noting. So these invisible will-o-wisps, AC 19, health of 27, they fly 50 foot at a time. They have a lot of immunities. They can move through creatures, but ultimately do a shock with 11 lightning damage. Bonus action, it can suck life out of anyone unconscious, regaining health, but that will make it go invisible again. Area 61. A control room with a star-shaped lever a red dial and a blue dial, a red button and a blue button, which stands prominently in the centre of the room. The walls here have 5 configurations of the rooms outside, one of which has a green light underneath, which is number 3. There is a handy handout, thankfully. None of the possessing spirits know how to use this control panel, but some will have a good old guess. Now this control panel can be destroyed at any time, but this will call a DC 16 deck save to avoid 2d10 lightning arcs. The blue dial moves the green light to which one of the configurations are chosen. The blue button is like pressing enter. The star lever is currently not causing Aboleth slime to pour into the cog rooms. Pulling it down will have the slime cover 1 inch of the floors in the rotating rooms. Now the lever's star shape is relevant to another room later on. There's a big statue with an indentation of a star in its forehead. The red button closes an iron door to this room's cog passage. Don't stand under it or it's 8d10 bludgeoning damage. The red dial turns left to telepathically talk to the Aboleth. Right turns that link off. "What now, Gora?" says the Aboleth, thinking they're talking to withers. Further conversation is like talking to a 5,000-year-old being who knows about the massive big baby monster known as the Soulmonger and awaits the coming of his death god. You can pretty much give away the information to anything in the tomb at this point. But the Aboleth has a split personality, one a knowledgeable one, the other one basically a toddler. So the players might actually get the impression they're talking to 2 different things. Here are the configurations. "62A is a cobwebbed corridor with words written on the ceiling in blood. Awaken Napaka." Napaka is actually the word of the stone juggernaut in the next rooms. The room slopes down from the top end to the west, down past a curtain to a lower eastern elevation. Candles on the walls illuminate pictures of people bowing before the black star that we saw on other wall paintings in the maze, I think it was. There's a crawl space hidden behind a keyholed picture of a crocodile-headed humanoid, which needs that crocodile key that they might have found. This leads to a ruby treasure at the end called the Eye of Zoltek. A thieves' tools fail by 5 getting through this crocodile-keyed hole. They're aiming for DC 21. Leads to a false wall opening, releasing the stone juggernaut, which rolls right down the rooms. 62C, a purple drape hides a statue of one of those 4-armed gargoyles we saw at the bottom of the main staircase. Except one of its forearms is broken off. The 3 remaining have palms open, the one on the floor clenched tight. There's a riddle on the wall, which says, 3 I need, then 3 more still, opens the door. 3 more what? There's no other clue. There's also a skeleton key dude here, if you haven't used him. And there's some of that grey Aboleth Psychic Ooze liquid stuff, 1d10 psychic. The open hands crush gems that are put in its palms, then reopen. I imagine you must kind of have to illustrate that crushed gems are being consumed, like the crushed dust disappears or something. Otherwise, they could just be putting loads of stuff in and going, well, has that done anything? I've put a coin in each hand, crush, yeah, and? Basically, if this statue crushes 9 gems, the hand on the floor opens with that treasure from the treasure room, the Eye of Zoltek, appearing in its open hand. Taking the crystal, though, simultaneously opens the false wall, causing the stone juggernaut to come racing down the corridor. Rolling initiative is very much in order, and the statue's mouth then breathes poisonous gas, which knocks players instantly unconscious on a fail rather than doing any damage. So check that any of the player's moves don't include the words when the player takes damage. It hasn't took damage, it's just reduced to a different condition. They are instantly unconscious. So, you know, not like, well, when I get hit, I teleport, you weren't hit. Oh, and the stone juggernaut rolls down at 50 feet a go. DC 17 deck save, 10d10 bludgeoning. But the juggernaut doesn't damage the statue at the bottom. If you remember, there was that magical mace they found in the coffin of Napaka herself, which had a twin fake. That, hitting the juggernaut, disintegrates the stone juggernaut to dust. 63. The gas, if you remember, creates 3 shambling mounds when it billows into room 58. It's also a DC 13 con save to avoid 4d10 poison damage. There's a corpse of Lord Brixton here from the Company of the Yellow Banner. He carries a magical longsword, which allows you to speak and understand Draconic. Also, he's got a Dungeoneer's pack and 6 gems, which might come in useful in the statue. Area 64. If you recall, a waterfall head here from a ledge room where there was a mimic chest on it. And I said, maybe we should seal this room off because they fall right through all the floors too far into the dungeon map. So the current that actually comes from that waterfall, you may describe a water cave opening underwater, pushing everyone down to the next portion, basically to 65. But describe cogs here in the water, pulling chains that are operating something on a lower level. There's tomb dwarves working on it, indifferent to the characters, just keeping the cogs oiled and moving. Maybe there's algae on it that need clearing off. The fight in this area isn't the glowing crabs on the bottom of the water, but rather the Aboleth, called Gullyroll. He's got thousands of years worth of knowledge. Aboleth, AC 17, 150 health, swims 40 feet, has telepathy. 3 to 4 legendary resistances, depending whether you consider this his lair. Gives off an emanation which curses a target, meaning that when the target gets out of the water it takes 1d12 acid damage every time its skin gets dry. The creature knows what the player's deepest secrets are, makes 2 tentacle attacks, reach of 15 foot, plus 9, hitting for 12 bludgeoning damage and grappling them with 4 possible tentacles. Grappled creatures take 10 psychic damage, and the Aboleth can consume their memories if reduced to 0 hit points. So I would say that if the player gets healed, they have no memories at all. They can charm creatures, making them act as allies for the Aboleth. We have 2 legendary actions if you consider this to be a lair, which I don't think I do. But come on, do what you want. 66. Okay, so this door at the bottom of the staircase opens fine from the staircase, but if you're in level 5, there's a magic mouth on the room side, asking to be fed some glowy food, meaning the phosphorescent crabs. It spits out anything that doesn't fit its criteria, and then wraps its tongue around whoever donated and eats them, teleporting them to room 57, where all teleporters end up. There's a cage here that can give water breathing to whoever is in the cage. It fits 2 people. There's also 2 rowboats if you want to go rowing. They're named rowboats. The cage creaks, summoning the Aboleth over. Decide which of its 2 personalities you want to roleplay it as. So the rowboats are etched with names. There's Predator, which grants advantage on attacks while the boat's being used. It also has a lantern on the front to light the way. The Prey boat grants advantage on saves. Area 67. There's a stone block what drops to seal this room so it might be spotted on the way in. But once inside, they'll see a massive golden elephant with jewels in its huge tusks. I had to look up what Mastodon was, and it's basically a prehistoric elephant, but not a mammoth. Imagery tells of a Chultan warrior riding this huge Mastodon through the 9 hells back to this material plane. That's all just details. I mean, what happens? Spirits Aijin suggest climb aboard that elephant thing. Obalaka is afraid of the statue. Shigambi knows that we're all about to feel pain soon. Now, floor markings show that this elephant statue rotates. And there's a star indentation, if you remember, on its head for the remote control key. When you insert it, the statue trumpets, sealing off that room. 10d10 bludgeoning if you're under the stone block door. And it turns to face one of the paintings for a bit before another. It's a 360 turn by the time the initiative order gets back to the Mastodon's turn. Fire erupts as it starts to turn all across the room from the floor. 3d6 fire damage, unless you're riding the Mastodon. Then, round 2, it shoots out 4 spined devils. Round 3, 3 bearded devils. Then, on round 4, 2 barbed devils. Then, on round 5, 1 horned devil. Then on round 6, 1 Erinese, who will help the party if a soul is forfeit. It's kind of worth it for the survivors, because if the Erinese is bargained with or all the devils are destroyed, Smoke in the room coalesces into that Chultan warrior, Chugakari, who is a revenant. And he offers the skull chalice to the party. It's really valuable. And Princess Maxinare will reward them with an absolutely paltry 250 gold pieces for it. It's worth 10 times that, don't give it to her. Area 68. This hallway is weird. And also, it has a little staircase down to level 6 too, but hopefully we'll do this floor first. Pictures of rotting corpses cover the walls in this room. And the PC's clothes fall off. Sorry, what? What did you say? All their clothes fall off. Any object of non-magical ingredient, be it cloth, leather or wood, instantly decays and corrodes and becomes worthless. So, what? You've got a naked wizard now, clutching his staff, a bard with a bag of holding, and a lute that's his spellcasting focus. Are spellcasting foci inherently magical, or does magic just pass through them? Is a magic wand the magic part, or is the magic part? I don't know. Anyway, I guess, do we alter the ACs of a naked wizard stood without his robes? Probably not, but leather armour, surely gone, reduces AC, right? AC 10? Metal has been destroyed earlier in this tomb, so PCs could have already been having to tie or stitch clothing on, and now it's gone. Feel free to completely not have that happen. An archway has an iron bull on it with a ring in its mouth. Pulling the ring out stops this disintegration thing. So maybe, I suppose a spirit could very much warn the party. If they don't want to lose everything, get that ring out of the mouth. But isn't it all too late at putting that halfway down the hall if you go with the room's actual meaning? All your backpacks are gone, your quiver's gone, you're just carrying your stuff. If I was a player, I'd be like, I've had enough, I'm going. Let me know what you decided. Area 69. This is quite video gamey platform-like. There's a chain going up and a chain going down. You've got to jump from one to the other to get to a higher ledge. It's 15 foot on the west side. Looking up and down this room shows that it goes to some sort of extra-dimensional portal. One goes up to Mechanus and the other goes down to level 6, I think. Anyway, modrons appear, not knowing why they've been summoned here. A pentadrone in a crystal shield container can now fly only in this crystal. And he commands a squad of 9 quadrones. The pentadrone opens up a little hole in the shield and poison gases out. It's paralysis gas, actually. Now, players could get into this with a little misty step in, fight the pentadrone and fly around in this crystal shard thing. They can't disappear up to Mechanus, and they can't go down to whatever's below. It's a fight, and then we move on. Area 70. This room is decorated with pictures of headless people, hinting at a possible consequence of what this room can deliver. There's something called an armillary sphere, which is one of these. It has a seat on the inside of the middle metal sphere. This armillary sphere depicts Toril itself and moons and suns. Toril being, obviously, the place that this whole Forgotten Realms thing is set on. Standing close to the apparatus causes this door to open and the seat's there. And sitting down in the seat closes the door. If you sit down and want to not have the door shut, you get 4d8 lightning damage for stopping the door in its closure. All you need to do is stand up and the door will let you out. The levers cause the sun and the moon to move to different positions and alter the rings. Moving the moon causes a Nikoloth to burst out of it. If this Nikoloth hits anyone with a crit, it decapitates them, instantly killing them. The operator can see through the metallic thing like glass and can't be targeted by the monsters outside. Positioning the celestial bodies in a row causes effects on this roll table. One of which says they get teleported to Earth, London, but Victorian era London. In the D&D wiki, Earth is spoken about, but it's not our Earth, it's a special D&D Earth. You might have your personality completely changed as one of the effects. Or you might roll Cloud Kill, Raining Gold, a supernatural gift, hit points, and eventually Wish. There's also a secret crawl space that comes out underneath the control panel for the cog rooms. Hit the buttons if you appreciate my efforts, and I'll see you next session.